What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Mondays Down South, presented by Seams Media. First guest of the new year, we got our boy Mick Dolan on, replacing Zach, who can't make it today. You guys know the spiel with Mick. We've had him on a bunch of times, so definitely a great guest to have on. Check out his stuff. He's over at FTN Fantasy now writing, as well as on a personal blog. I guess Dolan, what's the easiest place for people to find you? Directly at FTN or Twitter or what?
Yeah, I'm not great at Twitter, but I try and post like a good mix of my content there. I would say all my fantasy stuff is reserved for FTN Fantasy. I'm sure you guys always do a good job of linking in the description, and that's any of my fantasy-related content. As for just strictly football, NFL with not fantasy twist, that's going to continue to be in my Medium blog. So appreciate the plug and happy to be back. Great start to the football season and always great chopping it up with you guys.
I love it. As part of Sorry.
What's up, E?
I was just going to say, I forgot part of the intro I wanted to make was, and fan of the best team in the NFL, Philadelphia Eagles. Power rankings are, some of them have you there. But we'll see. I'm sure we'll get into it. Sorry, I cut you off twice.
No, you're good. No worries. I was just going to say it seems opportune timing, one, because of the Eagles, and two, I think if we're going to have our first guests on for the new revamped version, I think it would make sense for it to be Dolan out of everybody as our very loyal viewer, listener, guest, and just enthusiast of football. So I'm excited to have you back on, Dolan, as always. And honestly, this is going to be easy because you're just going to be so giddy about the Eagles this time. We won't have to worry about anything else. If anything, we got to make sure you don't talk too much about Eagles. So I think we can jump into it. I'll tee up the first topic since we kind of chatted about this a little bit earlier. We're only 3 weeks in, so we feel like it's a good segue from our overreactions last week, this week, to talk about who we think 3 weeks into the season, or I guess going into week 4, are going to be your award winners, your NFL honors winners of the year for the respective, I was going to say positions, but I say respective areas. So that includes MVP, Offensive Player of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year, your head coach, and Rookie of the Year. So those are the 5 we're going to chat about. I don't think we really need to waste time. We can jump right into it. We'll start with the guests for this week, and let's start with Rookie of the Year. I think that's a good place to start.
Yeah, sure thing. I would say, are we doing both offensive and defensive? I got one for each, but if you want me to just pick one, I can speak to that.
I like the fact that you're ready for both, so if you want to throw both out there, go for it, Dawn. I got one.
Cool.
But that's me personally.
I'll go defense. Show some love to the defense because that I feel like just in the world of fantasy sports doesn't get as much love. And I think it's fairly chalk, but Trayvon Walker has been off to a fantastic start. Easy to say the number 1 overall pick, but he's kind of looked as advertised. They're using him in a ton of different ways. He's generating a bunch of pressure. And don't look now, but the Jags defense is actually legit. That's a 2-1 team. It looks like they have a decent chance at winning what might be a weak division, no offense, Cy, which I think only helps from a narrative perspective. Players win awards, and I think he's just been off to a fantastic start. He plays a premium position. He's on a team that's starting to get a lot of buzz, and, he's just looked the part. So that is my early pick.
Fair enough.
I love Dolan getting going with some defense. I'll jump over it. This might be the obvious choice. I tried not to cheat and look at the actual betting odds on these guys, so I didn't with this one. But Drake London, man. Drake London's just looked fantastic. I think, going into the season, I liked him a lot. Wasn't sure how the speed would play, but it's played just fine. And obviously his size adds another element to that offense. And he's kind of turned into the de facto number 1, even above Kyle Pitts. Although the Falcons, they made sure to force it to Pitts there in week 3 and get him involved. But Drake London's my guy for sure. I think he got a lot of good candidates. Garrett Wilson looks good as well, but I'm going Drake.
I love Drake London, and that's somebody who I was going to consider. But actually my pick, and the problem is I don't actually know what his injury status is. I know Trayvon Walker is having an amazing season thus far, but Aiden Hutchinson last week was going off for the Lions. And the Lions have been a surprise team as well in terms of their competitiveness. And I think Hutchinson was like on pace for like 4 sacks before he got hurt in a single game. So I actually think Aiden Hutchinson's going to be my pick, assuming he's healthy. Offensively, my pick would have been London as well, because I think he's clearly the focal point of that offense right now. So those are the 2 guys for me. So you guys kind of touched on it. But honestly, I will say shout out to the Jaguars, because a lot of people gave him flack for that Trayvon Walker pick, and clearly so far they have been very on point with it. So move on from there. E, you want to start us off with, I think we'll go coach of the year before we jump over to the other position.
Yeah, this one's an easy one for me. It's Mike McDaniel. I mean, obviously what he's done with the Miami offense is incredible, but specifically Tua Tagovailoa. I mean, I've been a big Tua hater throughout his entire career, but I mean, it's hard to argue that he looks like a top 10 quarterback at this year, given some of the regression in some of those middle tier guys. But like, him and Hurts have jumped a lot, and I think a lot of people's quarterback rankings. And I mean, he looks darn good, and obviously a lot of that comes with being able to bring in Tyreek Hill and some of the other weapons they got on offense. But Mike McDaniel for me, Miami Dolphins, one of 2 3-0 teams. I think you guys know who the other one is, but that's my guy for sure.
Well, it's funny you say that, because I was actually bouncing between the 2 3-0 teams, not because of the bias of the fact that they're both 3-0, but genuinely because I think these are both young coaches that clearly have potential to, put together a great squad to compete for this year. And Sirianni is the guy that I was torn about, because he's an ex-coach, ex-offensive coordinator of the Indianapolis Colts. For anyone who doesn't know, that's a funny coaching triangle, because we got Frank Reich from the Eagles after their Super Bowl season to be our head coach, and then the Eagles took our offensive coordinator and Nick Sirianni to be their head coach. And a year in, it looks like he learned a thing or two, because he's balling on offense. So I'm actually going to go Sirianni, even though I wanted to go McDaniels. And I think maybe part of that is just me being contrarian, because I think McDaniels is the easy choice for everybody right now. But I actually think Sirianni, with the Eagles' defense being as good as it is as well, paired with the fact that Hurts looks like he has MVP potential, going along with the fact that A.J. Brown and other guys are balling in that offense, I'm really excited to see where the Eagles finish, and I genuinely think the East is theirs. I don't even think it's going to be close at this point. So that's my belief.
That's a good little segue. Speaking of Eagles coaching triangles, I am actually going to say my vote, and I'm not a sudden Jaguars bias fan, is actually Doug Peterson. I think when you take a roster that was the worst in the league last year, based on overall draft position, win-loss record, and turn them into now a 2-1 team, which obviously they still have a ways to go, but just based on the eye test and like some of the advanced metrics you look at, this team is substantially better. How much of that is, Doug Peterson versus simply anyone that's not named Urban Meyer remains to be seen. But I always like Peterson a lot as Philly. There's probably a teeny bit of bias in there. But I feel like Coach of the Year award always goes to the guy who just exceeds expectations. So that's why I have it down as Doug right now. McDaniel is actually my number 2, I think, for that exact same reason. It's just like what he's done with that Jaguars team that Dolphins team, and flipped them around just almost immediately, especially on the offensive side of the ball where his specialty has been fantastic.
It's a great choice.
Perfect.
No love for Nate Hackett, boys.
Is there somewhere you can vote for not Coach of the Year? Like the opposite of that award thus far? I mean, hey, you know what? In his defense, he is 2-1 for as much crap as he's getting, but we were joking about this the other day, Dolan, where 2 weeks into the season, 2 weeks into his NFL head coaching career, they hired a special advisor to help him make decisions on the field. I cannot think of anything more embarrassing for a head coach 2 weeks into their NFL career of head coaching. So that was pretty funny.
I will defend Hackett a little bit on that. I always like to tip my hat. He's been awful. Like, let me put that out of the way. He has not been a good coach. But I do like to tip my hat when a coach acknowledges a weakness. And it sounds like that was his hire. He was like, hey, this is something I'm not great at. I want to improve. So I'll give him a little bit of a benefit of the doubt there. But as far as the product you've seen on the field, the defense has carried this team to 2 victories. And, I mean, that is largely a carryover, I think, from the roster that's already in place and how great they were with Fangio last year. But man, the Broncos offense has just been like making my eyes bleed. It is rough.
Yeah, that'll probably come up on the recap as well, so we can chat about that a little bit more. With that being said, I'll jump into, we were just talking about great defenses, so I'll jump into Defensive Player of the Year, and I'll start us off with this one. I'm going to go with, even though I said the Eagles are going to win the NFC East, I'm going with Michael Parsons. I know it's hard to pick against Aaron Donald, and Aaron Donald probably will win if we're being real here, but just to not pick the same guy every year, the greatest defensive player of our generation, arguably, I'm going to go with Michael Parsons because what that man does at the linebacker position and as a pass rusher is, something I haven't seen in a while, and it's in a way that's different than guys like Von Miller and the class before of pass rushers. He looks like a legitimate linebacker, but he bull rushes like a legitimate pass rusher. And for a defense that is good but not great, that has a lot of weaknesses, I think he often makes up for that with the way he imposes his will on a game. And his statistics speak to that, because I think he's maybe leading the NFL in sacks. If not, he's very close. And then on top of that, he's also just always in the quarterback's face causing havoc. And I was talking about this when we had the draft episode a year ago. I cannot believe he fell as much as he did. I know there was character concerns. I remember telling Evan and Zach, if he falls, I want the Colts to take him. Unfortunately, he got picked a few picks before that. Not that I'm complaining about who he went with, but at the same time, wow, he's something special. And I think he's going to be a menace in the league for the next decade. So Michael Parsons is my pick.
Yeah, he was mine as well. I think I don't need to add a ton. I will say I looked it up right before this, and I think he's tied for second in the league with sacks with 4. And someone else had like 4.5. So he's obviously not far behind. And I think those numbers look like they're, just going to keep going up and up and up. And then my plan B, in case someone else took Parsons, of course, was Aaron Donald, which I think needs no explanation as well. So I'll just, pass the ball to Evan over here. To see if there's any new names on the list.
I have no new names on the list. I think Parsons is definitely my guy. He's just such a game wrecker. And the Cowboys' defense overall is good, but I really think that's almost exclusively due to Micah Parsons. Trayvon Diggs is obviously good at the back end, but he's going to blow some coverages here and there. They overall have other good guys on the line also, but I just think the Cowboys are another team that's winning with defense here. I think that's mainly due to Parsons. So that's my guy for sure. Wouldn't be surprised if Donald comes back and wins it, but obviously it helps having Watt injured. But yeah, just such an impactful player this year.
Do you guys have any sleepers by any chance? Now that we've all picked the same 2 guys.
Yeah. I wish I had
the one that I think was my kind of sleeper that I didn't do as much research on, because he was kind of number 3, was Fred Warner, just because I think that Niners defense has the potential to be nasty as well. And I think oftentimes it's let's give it to the best player and the best defense, and that dude just locks down the middle of the field and is just constantly swarming to the ball. Great in coverage, great against the run. So, and I just love watching him play. I think it's tough for an off-ball linebacker to do that unless you're putting up, the pressures that Parsons is, who's more of a hybrid edge. But I love Fred Warner, and I think he's if the San Francisco defense keeps it up, I think he'll at least be in the running.
Yeah, and I think it's funny you said Fred Warner, because I'm a little biased on this take as well. But I genuinely believed if he was going to come into the season healthy, that Leonard would have been my dark horse for Defensive Player of the Year, because he has legitimately him and Fred Warner have been the best linebackers in the NFL for the last 3 years running, and I think both of them deserve more recognition than they get sometimes for just how dominant they are on the field. But with Leonard being hurt, obviously he's not going to get that potential. So I'm glad you mentioned Fred Warner, because both those guys I think deserve more credit, because I think nowadays the linebacker position that doesn't pass rush gets slept on more than ever. So I appreciate that you brought that up. With that being said, sorry, go ahead. The
other guy I'll mention, not necessarily because he's a sleeper, although he definitely would be a candidate, is Myles Garrett. Just thoughts out to him. I know that he just got into a pretty gnarly car accident. It seems like he's all right. Just some injuries here or there, but glad he's doing all right. That was a scary story from yesterday. And then Max Crosby, I don't think he'll ever be at that level where he could win a Defensive Player of the Year. I just love watching him rush the passer, and obviously the Raiders look terrible this year, so that's not helping his case, but honorable mention for someone further down the list.
Yeah, if you're speaking of honorable mentions, don't forget about Jalen Ramsey either, as somebody as a secondary player. He's been balling since week 1 again, so it wouldn't be surprising if he does some crazy stuff and wins it. So we'll jump over to what am I forgetting here? Offensive Player of the Year, and I think Dolan's teeing us off for this one. If we're going in order here, so Dolan, go ahead.
Yeah, I got Stephon Diggs right now. I think he leads the league in numerous receiving categories right now, and there's a good chance that come season's end, the Buffalo Bills are going to be the best offense in the league. They're, at the very least, they're going to be in the running for that. And then I think you just get the narrative as well of this offense really turned it around, just the Bills in general, as soon as Diggs came over in that trade. And I think eventually, sometimes with voters, you get that narrative to kind of keep up and say, okay, this guy could have been in the running for this award the past couple of years. And I mean, he's just lit the league on fire these first 3 weeks. Is it going to be sustainable? I don't know. This is one of those awards that the league kind of makes a pseudo non quarterback MVP award for the offense. So I kind of use that as my criteria of not putting any quarterbacks in here. So I'm going with Diggs. I mean, that offense is humming, and he is just like a target machine there and doing it all for him in the passing game.
I love it. That's a great choice. I'm going to jump over to I'm going to go Justin Jefferson here. I just think Kevin O'Connell's come in, and I think he said, all right, let's just throw it to Justin Jefferson every play if we can. Now, he's coming off a really down week. I'm a little concerned about this pick, and I was going to switch it up just before this podcast, given that the Lions managed to come up with a way to shut him down. But I don't think many teams are going to be able to do it. I think they would throw it, give him 20 targets a game if they could. I think that's just the Kevin O'Connell plan here with Kirk at the helm this year, and I think he's just going to be racking up ridiculous numbers. Don't
sleep on Jeff Okudah. He can lock people up. I know they gave him some help, but
I'm assuming he had quite a bit of help. I didn't watch that one too closely, but
yeah, I think it's funny you guys picked 2 wide receivers, and every fiber of my body wanted to pick Saquon just because I was so in on the Saquon train coming into the season. And, I think a lot of people push back on that a little bit because they're like, oh, I don't know about the Giants offense. But even on a not-so-great Giants offense, Saquon has looked amazing so far through the first 3 weeks. I don't know if you guys saw some of the plays he made against the Cowboys the other night, but wow, he looks spry. I want to pick Saquon, but I just don't think that offense is going to be able to support him. So he can be my comeback player of the year, even if we're not talking about that position. And the funny thing is, Ev kind of took my guy because I kept going back and forth between Justin Jefferson and somebody else. But I'm actually going to go with a third receiver in Cooper Kupp because I just think I know that's obvious. I know he won it last year, but you watch the Rams every week, and the amount of love that Matt Stafford has for Cooper Kupp is probably more than most people do for their firstborn child. I mean, it's absurd. The dude, all he does is throw him the football no matter what the circumstances is. So I love Cooper Kupp's game on the field too, regardless of what your feelings are off the field. I just think Cooper Kupp is so easily going to score a touchdown every week and get almost 100 yards every week. It's almost a given. So I'm going to go Cooper Kupp. But this is great because all 3 of us pick wide receivers, and it goes directly along with the narrative I was pitching a week ago with my overreaction. So I'm happy about that.
Yeah, Kupp was who I was going to switch it back to after the Lions shut down there, but just can't do it.
Yep, he was my plan B too. So it sounds like I think we're all in more or less agreement here.
Okay, well that's perfect then, because then we'll roll right into the MVP. Ev, I wonder if there's any similarities between your MVP or Offensive Player of the Year. I'm assuming you're going quarterback. We'll see.
Yeah, this is one of my preseason takes. I had 2 MVP guys that I named. The first was Justin Herbert, who, given the rib injury, tough break, I think it's going to be kind of choppy in the middle, and they've also lost a lot, including the offensive lineman there after the year, Slater. So I'm going to go with it's not a huge sleeper, but he's fit the bill so far, Lamar Jackson. I love the Ravens this year. I think their offense looks incredible. And Lamar's passing. I think, doesn't he have the highest passer rating in the league or something ridiculous at this point? And he's also running up and down the field as he always does. A little concerned about the rest of the run game. Hopefully Dobbins brings it now that he's back on the field. But Lamar's my guy. I think it's going to keep rolling. I think he's going to be on that, not revenge tour, but that contract, I'm trying to secure the bag tour. And he's going to get himself an MVP.
Yeah, MVP was, funny enough, the one that I did not have a plan B for, because I was like, I think there's a clear-cut head and shoulders winner. And I agree right now. It's Lamar Jackson. I saw a couple stats. In his MVP year in 2019, he accounted for 65% of the Ravens' total offensive yards that whole season, which is any passing yards plus his own rushing yards. This year, that number is up to 85%, and he has been involved in 100% of their offensive touchdowns. And they look like one of the best offenses in the league. It's just I don't see how you can pick anybody else right now. Cy, I would love to hear if you disagree and hear a counter argument, but man, this offense is humming right now. The dude is on a mission, and he is just so fun to watch too. I think is you do get that little bonus when you add the human element of people voting on it, and he's awesome.
I think the contract year element has motivated him more than ever, and honestly, he should be the favorite to win the MVP. But I'm going to go Josh Allen this year because I think Josh Allen has had one coming, and I think it's his year to shine. It's funny because this is contradicting because I don't know if you happen to watch last week's episode, Dolan, but my overreaction was that I think people are overreacting to the Bills in the sense of I don't think the Bills are going to win the Super Bowl. But at the same time, I still think as a regular season award and the way that I see him playing football, Josh Allen very well could win the MVP this year, and it wouldn't surprise me if he did. He's throwing the ball the way he throws that football is Rodgers-esque, except he might have a little bit more power, maybe not as much finesse, but the way he throws that football is something special. And I know they had a down week last week against the against the Dolphins, but I know even when funny enough, that's who Lamar lost to as well. So we've had two potential MVP quarterbacks lose to the Dolphins, but I just believe that Josh Allen, that's going to motivate him even more, and I think he wants it so bad because I feel like even though he's somebody that's been so great for the last 2 to 3 years, in the elite class, he's always considered the second or third best at best. And I just think that's the motivation, if we're talking psychologically, for him to go win it this year, especially with Stephon Diggs as his wide receiver one, who he picked as offensive player of the year. I think that benefits him with Gabe Davis and Isaiah McKenzie. That's a loaded receiving corps. So I'm picking Josh Allen.
Speaking of the Bills, I was going to sneak this into one of the Lakers segments. Might as well do it now. I really think the Bills thought they were going to go 20-0. Like, after seeing that loss to the Dolphins, like, the way the offensive coordinator just absolutely lost his mind up in the booth after that McKenzie trying to cut up field instead of get out of bounds. And then Josh, I mean, I know everyone was making fun of making the Tua Tagovailoa jokes when he was, like, hugging Josh Allen. But, man, they were really, really bummed after that Week 3 loss after 2 wins to start the year. I genuinely thought that they expected to go 20-0, and, like, that was, like, a real goal of theirs. I just wanted to throw that out there because, wow, they were hurt by that loss big time.
I could not get over their reactions to that. They were like pounding the floor, like the offensive coordinator thought, like went on like a steroid temper tantrum or something. That was amazing. I have no idea why they took that so seriously. I understand losing a game is frustrating and the fashion in which they lost is frustrating, but come on, man, it's a 17-game season. You'll be all right.
I think they just were I mean, if I was them, I would have been pissed because I feel like the Bills should have won that game about 14 different ways and just couldn't get it done. And it's just like, how are all of these things breaking wrong? But, yeah, a bit of an overreaction that made for some good old content on the internet.
I love it. Dolan, the other thing I wanted to mention, is any love for Jalen Hurts? Can he actually make a run at the MVP, you think? Maybe a sleeper there?
I mean, I think he's got a chance. Like, he's definitely putting up the numbers. The Eagles have a path to being a really high seed in the NFC, and he is very much the focal point of their offense. Obviously, he's got a ton of help. Like, the supporting cast around him is fantastic. But if he just keeps, playing solid, mistake-free football and, like, making a big play here or there and letting the superstars on the offense, like, do some work around him, I think he's got a really good shot at it. I'm not sure if he's quite on that tier of the guys that we mentioned, as well as, the Mahomes and a few other names. But, I mean, if this trend continues, it's hard not to say he's at least going to be getting some votes.
Yeah, I thought about Hurts myself, but I thought about numbers-wise, and I just know seeing Josh Allen and Lamar kind of come into their own after having a few more seasons than Hurts and just kind of their ceilings for what they could put up there. It was hard for me to pick Hurts, even though I certainly see them having a great offense. So, yeah. Well, that's kind of it for the picks of our award winners for this segment, and that's perfect because we can jump right into recap as it's kind of already set up quite a few. The way we've kind of approached it, Dolan, is picked a couple games here and there that we wanted to discuss, and then we just kind of talk about what kind of stood out about those games and what it says about the team, and kind of open forum here. So, Ev, I'll let you get started if there's any specific games this weekend that stood out to you that you wanted to focus on.
Yeah, I think we talked about Bills and Dolphins a lot, but I'll throw you some love. Cy Colts, desperate for a win a little bit, 0-2, and you're looking at that schedule and you're saying, we're 0-2 and we got the Chiefs coming to town?
We're not 0-2, we were 0-1.
Sorry, 0-1. Basically 0-2, though, because it was against the Texans. It felt like 0-2, I should say. But
could make a difference.
It probably will at the end of the season, honestly. Maybe you and the Titans break a tie there, but... yeah, you look at that 0-2 schedule coming in for the home opener, and you're like, oh boy, we got Patrick Mahomes coming into town. Sneak out a late victory. Team played pretty well as a whole. Defense played very well, so I'll give you guys some love. That's huge, and obviously with how the division started, The Titans with a nice win as well, but that gives you guys a jumping off point to kind of get it rolling here and make that division and beyond run that you're all hoping for.
I'll let Dolan react first, and I'll jump in as the resident Colts fan on this podcast.
Oh, no, I want to hear you go first, Si. I didn't watch the Colts game too much, so I will defer to you here, but I think just anytime you kind of keep the heart beating, if nothing else, in a win like this. I will say from what I did see, similar to the Bills game, like it feels like the Chiefs kind of threw that game away a couple times. I mean, it's not often you see Kelsey drop a pass that's in his hands in the end zone. It's not often that, the game is basically over and then you get an unsportsmanlike conduct to keep the drive alive. So I would say there was a couple things like that made it concerning. But, I mean, just seeing signs of life and even, like, keeping it close with the Chiefs team with your back against the wall is huge. And the Colts have, I feel like, under Frank Reich, just notoriously been slow starters for one reason or another anyway. So, hopefully this is just the kick in the pants they needed, and now they're heading in the right direction.
Yeah, so the funny part of that is the Colts, it goes both ways actually in that game because, when a team that's an underdog wins, a lot of people will point to why the team that was expected to win didn't because of dumb mistakes that they made. But we made the same mistakes on the flip side, like turnovers in their red zone, fumbling on plays we shouldn't have fumbled in, things of that nature. So we gave them more opportunities than we should. And I said to Evan in the middle of the game, I was like, you can't keep doing this with the Chiefs and expect to win the game. But we both made mistakes, and we capitalized more than they did. And that's really what the difference was. Because obviously I think the Chiefs coming into it, people consider the better team, especially given our showings in week 1 and 2. But I said to Evan, this is kind of the model for the Colts, right? We have this thing where, for whatever reason, when we have the talent, when we go play the good teams, we'll show up and we'll either beat them or we'll be right there every single time against the good teams, and then we'll play the Jaguars every year and we'll find a way to lose the Jaguars. Granted, the Jaguars are way better this year than I think they were in prior years when we lost to them, but I'm not surprised. I picked the Colts money line. Obviously, that was a bold pick as with a biased pick of a Colts fan, but I'm not surprised we won that game. I think we have a great defense that's still figuring things out under a new defensive coordinator in Gus Bradley. I think a lot of people forgot that Matt Eberflus, our defense coordinator for the last 3 years, left to go coach the Bears, and obviously they needed a wake-up period. Leonard's not back as the leader of our defense, so they just need a little bit of time. But our boy Stephon Gilmore, my Gamecock, stepped up huge in that game, made a couple massive plays. So I'm really not surprised. I think we were good enough to beat anybody, but we're also obviously, we also obviously have enough flaws to lose to anybody. So I think that's what we kind of have to figure out as the season goes along. But I think this shows you what our ceiling is, but it also shows you what our floor is. And I just think as we get a little bit more into the weeds with our new players, obviously having acquired quite a few, and with a couple of the coaching changes that we have, I believe we'll get back into being one of the better teams in the NFL as the season progresses, which is why I didn't want to overreact the first 2 weeks, as frustrating as it was. Getting shut out a week ago was absurd, and then beating the Chiefs the week after. And then Evan made the point of going back home makes a huge difference. So that really helped to wake us up. So I'm excited. And our offense needs to pick it up, though. I don't know why we're not running more with Jonathan Taylor. It's kind of frustrating me. I understand that we don't want to have him work as much as he did last year, but that's the one last thing I'll say. Our offense, we need to run through JT more. He's arguably the best offensive player in the NFL, and we need to get him the ball more. So that's my only qualm of this weekend. But I'm excited about the future goals. Dolan, you pick again.
Yeah, I think the obvious one here is just the Eagles. So as you guys know, I follow them basically religiously. So I think my real takeaway with them is, like, they are a complete football team. Like, we were talking Jalen Hurts MVP talk. He's looked fantastic. And I would say yesterday he looked very good, but not as great as he did against, like, the Vikings, and I would say even to a lesser extent the Lions. But that offense just shows that, like, they can just put up points in the blink of an eye. Like, you can get a little concerned that, they got shut out for 2 weeks in a row in the second half, but it's like being able to put up 24 points in the second quarter in a league where you sometimes just need to be able to score really, really fast is huge. I mean, they've got great protection for Hurts. They've got great weapons around him, and then he's doing a more than fine job on his own to keep the offense going. I think that's going to be borderline top 5 offense come season's end. And then on the other side of the ball, you've got all the pieces as well. There's no weak links anywhere in that defense. And I think in today's NFL, that's what's super key is teams are spreading the ball around a ton. They have so many different ways they can beat you. They had 9 sacks against the Commanders, 7 of which I saw came with no extra blitzers. So it was just them rushing 4 guys. And that was a combination of both. Sometimes just their defensive line just straight up beat people one-on-one. Every once in a while, it was a situation where just everybody was locked up and it was a kind of a coverage sack. And I just think on both sides of the ball, they have so many different ways that they can beat you. And I think they are a legitimate contender for the number 1 seed in the NFC. And I could not be more excited. So I have a feeling the rest of the world right now is just like super high on the Eagles and not disagreeing with me enough to like try and bring me down a little bit. So are either of you guys going to do that, or are you right there with me?
So I'll jump in. I will say this. I do think you have every reason to believe the Eagles could finish as number 1 seed in the NFC, and clearly they're a complete team. So it would not surprise me if they make a deep run. My only thing that I will say is if I still had to pick a team to win the NFC, I'm still going Rams, even if they've gotten off to somewhat of a slow start, just because I believe as complete as the Eagles are, they're a great defensive team, they're a great offensive team. I think the Rams are that and then some with some of the upper tier talent they have at multiple positions, right? Like I think if you look position to position, you get the best defensive tackle in the NFL, arguably the best wide receiver in the NFL, arguably the best corner in the NFL, arguably, top 5 to 10 quarterback in the NFL. I mean, it's kind of absurd how many weapons they have. So that's the only thing I'll say. Like I think as of right now, the only team I see right now as a clear contender to pass the Eagles and be the class of the NFC is the Rams, who won the Super Bowl last year. So outside of that, I can't say anything because genuinely you've played 3 games. You've played good teams as a part of that, and you've at least 1 or 2 solid teams. Well, I'm not talking about the Commanders. We're talking about the teams prior, and y'all played well against them. So I'm really excited to kind of see how you hold your own against one of the better like top of the NFC, top of the AFC teams you play down the road, because I think usually that tells a more complete story of how your team can hang. So if you guys can keep that close, especially on the road, then I think it'll push that narrative more. But I can't talk any smack to you. I'm so hyped to see Devonta Smith have a massive game too. I've always loved that guy, and to see him making big strides in the NFL is exciting to me. So
I will say on the level of competition piece, the quarterbacks they've beaten thus far are Jared Goff, Carson Wentz, and then not just Kirk Cousins, but primetime Kirk Cousins. So they do still need to. I do still need to see a little more consistency from the defense. But you can only beat the team that's in front of you. So, and they've done that exceedingly well so far.
Well, and they're going to have an easy schedule the whole rest of the way. I don't. Was it you, Dolan, that sent the little tidbit about the Eagles are going to be projected to be favored? Or no, it's probably my other Eagles friend that said, I think the Eagles are projected to be favored in every single game the rest of the season just based on their schedule right now, which is a breeze. But, yeah, I'm not going to talk about the Commanders. I mean, it was basically a home game for the Eagles, which I found out when I got to Union Station at 8 o'clock at night, and Union Station was just filled with Eagles fans.
Midnight green.
I'm surprised when I got on the train to come back up here that there wasn't an EAGLES Eagles chant. I don't know. I think it was because I was in the quiet car. I got lucky on that one. But, Sai, you got another game?
Yeah, so... the other one's hard because we already went with the Dolphins game with the Bills. I think we kind of already touched on that. Ravens beat the Patriots. I don't have a lot to say about that one in specific, but I did want to point to that was a pretty close game after back-to-back weeks for the Patriots where they won one and the second one. It was pretty close until Mac Jones got hurt at the end there. So the only reason I want to point to that is I don't think the Patriots are going to be like a playoff contender. But one thing that I will say is with Bill Belichick, that team is just going to hang around. Like that's what they do every year. I know everyone's talking about the Dolphins, everyone's talking about the Bills, but I'm telling you, I just want to throw it out there that the Patriots are not just going to fade away in oblivion when they play teams, because Bill Belichick is he's that kind of coach, man. He can make a team competitive with anybody. So I just want to give the Patriots a shout out because I don't think they're gonna be some good playoff team, but I also just think Bill Belichick is that special. So I got
even with Brian Hoyer stepping up, it sounds like Mac's gonna be out for a little bit.
Dude, the dude won 11 games with Matt Castle back in the day. I think that guy has proven he can win with anybody. That's my opinion.
And Mac looks horrendous this year, so I don't know if that's much of a downgrade. I mean, they did still lose by 11 points at home, so I'm not going to give them too much credit for that. But yeah.
It was one possession until he got hurt. Like, it was a really close game. No, it ended up being an 11-point game because the Ravens had like a crazy play at the end there or something like that. It was really close the whole way. So that's actually one of the reasons I brought it up is it's one of the reasons I'm a little bit worried about the Ravens' upside because they blew a game against the Dolphins the week before. So clearly and then the Patriots put up like close to 30 on them the next week. So clearly they have some things to address on the defense, which has not been a problem for them for the last decade. But it seems like this year teams are just going to blow the roof off of them if they don't. I don't see how they're going to be the team like the Bills or the Chiefs if they're just going to let other teams score on them at will. So that's one thing that I think they really need to improve, because I would love to see them win more. But plus, Bengals they got the ball rolling a little. So Ravens got to look out for them.
Yeah, they need to get the pass D going. That was supposed to be fixed this year after being one of the worst in the league last year, but so far not so good. But yeah, I'll just quickly. I want to pick up the pace a little bit here, but it's the Jets, but the Bengals offense did look a lot better. I'm hoping this kind of gets them on the right trajectory, because I still believe in the Bengals. And then the Jags, man.
Yep.
They went on the road to LA and beat the Chargers by 4 touchdowns. They're legit. I said it last week on my overreactions that they're going to win the division. They're legit as can be. I mean, come on. I mean, the Chargers are beat up now. I get it. But 4 touchdowns after beating the Colts by almost 4 touchdowns the week before. Whew.
I can't.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Dolan. I'll go last.
No, I was going to say, if you guys couldn't tell by my award predictions earlier, I'm basically a pseudo Jaguars fan now. But yeah, no, I agree. I mean, they are legit. They lack a lot of the superstar talent that some of the best teams in the league do, but it just goes to show if you have a really good quarterback, which Trevor Lawrence has been phenomenal. I mean, he's just on the money. He's still showing flashes of, every once in a while you see that, he's still acclimating to the NFL. But I mean, he's processing things quickly. He's making tough throws. He's getting the ball to his guys in stride, and that offense looks great. The defense looks great. They're well coached. That team's going to win a lot of games this year. If they're not going to win the division, I think they're going to be knocking on the door for a playoff berth one way or another. And yeah, they can hang with anybody.
Okay, so I know as somebody whose team lost them 24-0, it's probably going to make me look really bad saying this right now. But I think we're overreacting to how good the Jaguars are personally. First and foremost, they won by 4 touchdowns against the Chargers, so I'm not going to take that away from them. But why is Justin Herbert playing in that game? He looked absolutely awful. He should not have been playing. Granted, they still put up 38 on a solid Chargers defense, so they might have still won even if Herbert was in peak form. But without Keenan and without Herbert really playing to his full self, I can't say that was a normal victory that they would have had on the Chargers. They dominated my Colts last week. There's no disputing that. But obviously we've been an awful road team and clearly had some things to figure out. So I don't want to take that away from them, but at the same time, I look forward to seeing what our matchup looks like down the road. Granted, we never know how to beat the Jags, even if we can beat the team like the Chiefs, so I can't say much about that. But they lost to the Commanders week 1. So I think as a result of them winning the last 2 pretty decisively, people are forgetting that their floor is also pretty low. They're not a 3-0 team, and they very easily could go lose to another bad team down the road. I think they have a bright future with the players that they have. They clearly have a lot of young talent. The Christian Kirk signing, even though the money I think is still absurd, has looked great. Zay Jones popped off this week. Obviously, Lawrence is playing a lot better, and they have a good defense. But I just don't see them winning with as much consistency as maybe you two are pointing to, especially after losing to the Commanders and then, with them having played a banged-up Charger squad. So, again, I hate saying it because they are such a young, fun team to root for. I know they're in my division, but I got nothing against the Jags. I just don't see them being as good as a lot of people are making them out to be.
They easily could have won and should have won that Commanders game by 2 touchdowns. And to your point, they didn't. But I wouldn't have admitted this after that game happened because I was so happy to win. But Peterson made some really bad decisions on 4th down and for touchdown versus field goal that cost them a lot of points. And I think there were just a lot of nervous moments from a lot of their guys. Trevor, ETN drops, I think, a would-be touchdown, a lot of things like that. They probably could have won that game by 2 touchdowns. But to Sai's point, they didn't. They're still a young team. They're going to make mistakes. But I don't know. I'll give them a pass on that, honestly.
Fair enough. We'll see what happens.
Says the Commanders fan. But any other games? I guess a couple quick ones. Maybe Packers-Bucks. I don't have really a ton to add. I mean, these teams are winning with their defense right now, and the Packers are able to sneak it out. I don't really have a ton to comment on this game, but I mean, I
picked the Packers to be in the NFC Championship this year, and that made me feel a lot better about it, especially because I think a lot of people thought after Week 1 they were going to be struggling because they weren't able to really put up points with their massive receiver position. But what holds true for me always holds true for me here again, and it's that when you have one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL who's still playing without a guy like Devontae Adams, he's still playing like he's 33 30 or 29 or whatever it is. Like, Aaron Rodgers is something special, and I that's why I never pick against Packers, because he can score with anybody. So I think the Packers are still going to – I think the Packers are going to be slept on all year because they don't have that offensive potential that some people think they have, but I still would not surprise me if they go to the NFC Championship this year. That's how I feel.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Packers are still about as good as anybody in the NFC. And on the Bucs note, I will say they were missing like their top 3 receivers, and maybe even more than 3. So like, I'm still not like sounding the alarms on their offense. The defense once again looks fantastic. I know we're saying the Packers don't have like the elite offense that they maybe did last year, but still holding any Aaron Rodgers led offense to 14 points is impressive. And then we can't account for the fact, or like can't forget the fact that the NFC South looks pretty awful this year. So the Bucs should have a pretty clear path to at least one home playoff game, if not, more, depending on where the seeding shakes out. So I am not in any way, shape, or form worried about the Bucs just yet. Eventually, Tom Brady's going to, lose the battle to Father Time. But I mean, I haven't seen enough yet to think that this is the year where it happens.
So, and I'm with you there, Dolan. I think we're probably going to be running out of time really soon here on this segment. But can we at least really quickly get like a 30-second reaction from each of us about how we saved the best for the last, and last night's wonderful game between the Russell Wilson-led Broncos, who pulled off a miraculous victory against the San Francisco 49ers, Jimmy Garoppolo situation. That was absolutely amazing. The Dan Orlovsky memes were incredible. I cannot get over how terrible that game was. And so I say last night, but I guess I should say Sunday night. I can't get over how terrible that game was, but it was actually comical as to how bad that game was.
Yeah, I'm doing my piece this week is on like Hackett and Russ and kind of like where the Broncos go from here. So if anybody's interested, give it a read. It'll come out probably sometime Sunday. But man, that like it's just hard as someone who lives in Denver, who like I'm not like a Broncos fan, but this has just been so disappointing. They cannot do anything right on the offense. It's like, oh, wow, look, Javonte Williams just did something amazing. Let's wait like 7 more plays till we give him the ball again. And it's just like, I'm hoping that like this is just them needing to shake off the rust. It's like new quarterback, new head coach who's a first-time head coach and also calling plays. And the rest of the coaching staff is super young. I'm really hoping that like this is just a rough start for Denver, but man, it did not look good. And it hasn't all year on offense.
Yeah, the Broncos are pathetic, but honestly, that part wasn't a surprise. The surprise was maybe how bad San Francisco looked. I was kind of excited for them to get Jimmy G back, and then he ran through the back of the end zone on accident. So, rough game. We'll see where each of those teams go from here.
It's also absolutely hysterical as to I've never seen a team prior be 2-1 the way that they are in the Broncos and have literally the entire world talking about them like they're 0-3 with no potential for success going forward. I mean, they're a winning team, and if the playoffs happen right now, they'd be in it. So it's actually kind of hilarious. Like, I actually think the Broncos aren't as bad as people are. Like, they've played bad, but I think their potential is there, and I think Russ will get better. Sutton looked great. Javonte Williams, I think Hackett just needs to learn to get him the ball more because clearly he is a dynamic offensive talent that just doesn't get the ball enough. They'll figure it out. Their defense is dominant, and if they're winning, scoring like 10 points a game, think about what they're going to do if they're actually able to get back to the point of scoring 20 to 25. Like, that's going to be a nasty team in the AFC. So I'm not trying to run away from the potential of Russ figuring it out in a new team 3 weeks into it. So